All right, so we just finished solving one and two-step equations, which is our foundation for solving linear equations. And so now we're going to move on to multi-step equations. And so I want to show you the approach that I'm going to be using. And it's what I call the CSI One and Two-Step. And so CSI is an acronym. So I'm going to go ahead and write CSI. And I'll go ahead and write down what each of these stand for. Now, some of you might think this CSI means crime scene investigation. Well, that is not the case. First of all, C stands for clear fractions. So that's the first thing we're going to want to do when we solve an equation. So I know what I was going to say. See, the thing is, it's like I said in the last video, a lot of times students look at these multi-step equations and they just don't even know where to start. And so that's what I'm showing you here is an approach. So you're never going to have that question. You're always going to know what steps to take. So the first one is to look for fractions in the equation. And if it has fractions, you want to clear the fractions. So you do that by multiplying each side of the equation by the LCD, and basically that's the least common denominator. So you'll look at each of the denominators and the fractions and find the LCD, and then multiply both sides of the equation by that, and that'll get rid of the fractions. It'll make them disappear. Some people think that's a pretty cool thing. So what do you think S and I would stand for? I'm guessing some of you may know. S stands for simplify. So basically we're going to simplify one or both sides of the equation as needed. So if one or both sides need simplified, we're going to do that next. And then the last step is going to be I for isolate, which means we're going to isolate the variable on one side. In other words, if the variable is on both sides, we need to get it on one side because we're trying to get that variable all by itself on one side at some point. So if you have x on both sides, that's not possible until you get rid of it on one side. All right, so this is the approach I'm going to be using. And once you've done these three steps, you're going to have a one or two step equation. And hopefully at that point, you're just going to knock it out because you are now a professional at solving one and two step equations. All right, so let's move on. So if you look at the first problem here, so again, we're going to use CSI. So as I look at this first equation, I don't have any fractions to clear, but I do have some simplifying to do. Notice that we have a 1x and a 3x, that's 4x, and so we can simplify the left side. We get 4x equals 2, and see, we're done now. We've got a one-step equation, and we can finish this out pretty quick. Just divide both sides by 4, and we're going to get x equals 1/2. 2/4 reduces to 1/2. So notice that 2/4, it really means 2 divided by 4, but it can also be thought of as the number 2/4, which reduces to 1/2. If you were to actually do the division, you would get 0.5, which is the same as 1/2. All right, so I would encourage you to see if you can do the other three problems here, numbers 2 through 4. In each case, you're just going to need to simplify the left side and then solve the two-step equation that you end up with. All right, so let's see how you did. So first of all, we have some like terms here. A 7x and a minus 2x is 5x. So we get 5x plus 5 equals 40. And again, all we did here was simplify. We didn't have any fractions to deal with, and we won't for any of these. All we did is simplify, and we have a two-step equation, and we're home free. We'll subtract 5 on both sides. We get 5x equals 35, and 5 times 7 is 35. All right, let's move on to number 3. Now on number 3, we're just distributing. You do 5 times 2t, you're going to get 10t. And 5 times a minus 3, that's going to give us negative 15, which we'll write as minus 15, and that's equal to 30. And so again, we now have a two-step equation. We're going to add 15 to both sides. We'll get 10t is equal to 45. And we got to get rid of this 10 now. We'll divide each side by 10. Whoops. And so we're going to get, let's see, 45 and 10 are both divisible by 5. So divide by 5, you're going to get 9 over 2. Now, again, you could write this as 4.5, but I would encourage you to write it using a simplified fraction. You should be comfortable working with fractions. All right, on number 12, you're going to have to deal with that parentheses there. So first of all, let's bring the 12 down, and we're going to distribute a -1. So really, you could think of this as plus, so 12 plus -1 times what's in the parentheses. We're just distributing a -1. And so -1 times 2n, we'll get a -2n. And -1 times -8, that's going to be a +8. And on the other side, we'll keep our 15. Notice you've got a 12 and an 8 that you can combine on the left. And so now we have 20 minus 2n equals 15, which is a two-step equation. And so we're home free. Let's subtract 20 on both sides. You get -2n is equal to -5. We'll divide each side by -2. And so when we cancel, we end up with n equals 5/2. Now notice we would never leave a negative divided by a negative, because when you divide two negatives, you get a positive. All right, and so that's, in all of those problems, all we had to do was simplify the left side, and then we solved the two-step equation we were left with. Look at number 5 and notice how it's different. All right, so again, if we're using CSI, we don't have any fractions to clear. We can't simplify either side. If you look at the left side, it's 5x plus 4. Those can't be combined. They're not like terms. And if you look at the right side, 2x minus 5, same thing. There's nothing I can simplify there. And so what are we going to do? Well, we go to the next letter. I stands for isolate. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on in this whole row, is how do we get x on one side only? Well, there's a little tip here I'm going to give you. To get rid of a term, add its opposite to each side. So really what I want to do is get rid of this x term on the right. We have two terms here. So to get rid of a term, we just add its opposite. So you could add -2x, or just think of that as subtract 2x from both sides. And actually, I need to let my green go. So subtract 2x on both sides. Notice these x's, or 2x and a minus 2x is 0. And on the right, you're left with -5. And on the left, 5x minus 2x does give you 3x. And don't forget to bring down the 4. And so notice now we have x on one side only. And in fact, this is a two-step equation. So we'll subtract 4 on both sides. We get 3x is equal to -9. And then we'll get x equals -3 at that point. All right, so I would encourage you to go ahead and try 6, 7, and 8. Simplify, well actually on number 6, it's very similar to 5. Number 7 and 8, you're going to have to simplify first, and then it'll be quite similar to what we did. All right, so let's see how you did. On number 6, you should have subtracted 2x on both sides. You get 3 minus 7x is equal to 17. And we need to subtract 3 on both sides. We'll get -7x is equal to 14, which means x is -2. All right, number 7. Notice on the right side, I've got a 3x and a -7x. Notice the left side, there's nothing to do there. 3x minus 7x is -4x. And so we get -4x plus 25. And now everything's simplified. We're going to have to get x on one side only. We got it on both sides. Let's go ahead and add 4x to both sides. Now keep in mind, you could have added 2x to both sides, and you would get rid of the x on the left. In general, I like to keep my x on the left, so I'll normally get rid of the x on the right, but it really doesn't matter. So let's add 4x to both sides. We're going to get a minus 2x and a plus 4x is a positive 2x. So 5 plus 2x is equal to 25. Notice those cancel. And notice we now have a two-step equation. We're going to subtract 5 on both sides. On the left, the minus 5's cancel. You're left with 2x. On the right side, you've got 20. 2x is equal to 20, which means x is 10. All right, so on number 8, our last one here, we got to distribute a 3 and on the left. We're going to get 3x minus 15. And then let's bring down our 8. And we're going to have to distribute a negative 1. So we have negative 1 times x, which is a minus 1x, or just minus x. And a negative 1 times 1, well, that's negative 1. We'll write it as minus 1. Now notice we still have some like terms on the right. We can add the 8 and negative 1, or subtract there. You're going to get 7 minus x. And so notice now we're back to equation like number 5. We need to get rid of the x on one side. So again, we didn't have any fractions to clear. We did our simplifying. And now we see that we need to isolate x to just one side. It's on both sides. And so we'll add x on both sides. You get 4x minus 15 is equal to 7. So we have our two-step equation. We'll add 15 to both sides. And we will get 4x is equal to 22. I'm going to have to divide both sides by 4. And so we're going to get 11 over 2. All right. I think I'm going to stop the video right here, and I'll do a second part.